Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. Today, I have the Image Energizer here with me. I am so excited to welcome Linda Yates to the call. Linda, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm really thrilled to be with you today and to visit. I'm so excited. Thank you. And I love what you're doing with the network. I think it's so awesome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, we're thrilled to have you here. And I know we're going to have people that are going to be just like sitting on the edge of their seat wanting to know, what an image energizer is. So I'm thrilled to have you here. But before we jump in, let me take just a moment and do a little bit of housekeeping. I want to thank our audience. We know you have a choice as to what podcast you listen to. So we're super grateful that you're joining us today. And please leave us a review, share with your friends. Like, this is going to be an exciting episode packed with good tips. So I'm just setting you up, Linda.
Yeah. Pressure.
No pressure, none whatsoever. So yes, please do share the episode. And, we strive really hard to bring you great content, great speakers, great audio, or great wisdom that you can take away and use today. So, today Linda's going to take us through that. But let me tell you a little bit about Linda so you have some insight as to who she is and why we've invited her on the show. So Linda Yates is a dynamic trainer and speaker, executive coach, and author. She's known for her positive energy and real-world strategies. She has motivated over 10,000 individuals representing Fortune 500 companies, including some you may know of, like CVS, Delta Airlines. I mean, some pretty big ones there, Wells Fargo and Fannie Mae, many, many more. Those are just a few, just to give you some sense. And she's really focused on the internal processes and corporate initiatives in these organizations. Linda's mission is to inspire, inform, and illustrate how to lead, how to build teams, and communicate a positive, polished, and professional image. She believes nothing is impossible. I love that. I love that. My theory is, instead of impossible, mine is I'm possible, which I love. So, Linda, let's jump in and talk about image. And maybe just before we go there, though, just share a little bit of insight. Why does this topic inspire you so much?
Well, Vicki, it is great to be with you today. This topic really started for me when I was a 13-year-old, and you may be thinking, really? But it did. And in fact, earlier today, I was on another podcast that was dealing with sales. And so they were asking me what my first sales experience.
Mm.
And my first sales experience was persuading my parents to invest $300 on a packet that would enroll me into a multi-networking company that provided information and consulting on image. So everything that has to do with the clothes we put on, the line we put on, the colors we wear, and makeup and all of that together. And that was a company that I absolutely fell in love with. And when I was sitting in that training program, it was a 3-day training program, there was this woman by the name of Trisha Kwai. And as she spoke, I believed, as a 13-year-old, I was really doubting who I was and whether or not I was smart or could be pretty or confident. And this woman made me feel all of those things. And I knew at that moment that this is what I want to do for other people. I want to help them find that and tap into that. So I knew at a 13-year-old that that's what I wanted to do. So that's how that
Wow.
started.
I love that. And you're never too young to start, right? Like, that's so amazing. At 13, you knew exactly what you wanted to do.
Right.
Love
Now,
it.
I diverted from that plan because I bought into fear. Several years later, I married my husband very young, and my father, so I come from a highly educated family, and I was in college when I met Doug. And I'm like, I want to get married. And he's like, well, what if something happens to Doug? What if this? What if that? And I bought into that fear. And so I I left that dream on the table and I went to work for corporate America. And I did that for roughly 30 years, full time, and always kind of knew that this was nagging at me and I needed to do this. And finally, 11 years ago, I stepped out on the the cliff and took that dive, and it's been a wonderful journey. And through that 11 years, I have done all this research and studying with regard to everything that impacts the image and how the image it impacts others, but more importantly, it impacts ourselves. And that's really the basis of my systems and everything that I share and I talk about and write about.
Wow. Love it. Love it. Love it. And we're going to dive into that because I think that there's a lot of power in not only the external image, but the internal image. So I was really excited to have you on the show so we could talk about that. And, people often forget about what's going on the inside and how
Mhm.
that portrays on the outside. So let's talk about a few things about, how to achieve that image of distinction,
Mhm.
what not to wear, and how you can't just create that outer image. I mean, you got to have
Mhm.
congruency with what's happening outside and inside. So maybe let's just start there.
So that image of distinction, I really lay it out in your ABCs. And that is how you show up in your appearance, how you behave, and how you communicate. So that is truly the essence of what happens. So the appearance is, yes, it is an external thing, but what happens is whatever we put on our body impacts us internally. So think about it. When you've worked a long day and you go home, what is the first thing that you remove from your body?
It's
Vicky,
true.
Vicky, what do you take off first?
Probably my jacket.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then
Great.
I take off my clothes and put on like comfy yoga pants or right and just get super cash and ready to chill or go for a walk.
Right. So, and what happens is your mindset, everything changes in the way that you project out and the way that you show up based on that change. And they call that the embodied condition. So, anything that we put on our body is going to bring some kind of result that it's tied to. So when you are perhaps not feeling well and you need to have your energy step up, then do those things that will help step your energy up, be it with color, be it with a clothing item, that sort of thing. So that appearance is what that's all about in showing up. So again, that appearance is external, but it impacts what's happening internally very, very deeply.
Yes, and you're so true. I mean, that is so true what you're saying, Linda, because one of the things that I talk about, like when I'm coaching clients and they say, "Oh, Vicky, I've got this presentation or I've got to go on stage," I'm like, "Okay, so what is your power outfit?
Mhm.
What and what I mean by that is what makes you feel the best when you have that on, you feel confident, you might feel sexy, you might feel, I don't know, in control, like it's the image you want to project, right? So you call that embody conditions, right?
Right, the embodied condition. And there's some fabulous studies based on what people wear. What they did is they looked at salespeople that wore certain colors, and it was the same salespeople. And for a period of time, they gauged their sales wearing a certain color and line of their clothes. And then they gauged those same salespeople selling this exact same thing a few weeks later, wearing different colors and a different line. And they saw an 18% increase with the first group. So it
Interesting.
it is a very it is real. I mean it. Yeah.
Wow, I find that super fascinating. Like I would have never even thought. I mean, I've always thought about what you wear, like how it makes you feel, but even doing that scientific experiment to look
Mhm.
at color as an example, what makes you feel good and how, because it's what you're projecting, but it's also the recipient how they receive you, right?
Exactly.
And
Yes.
so that image becomes super important.
Yeah.
And what are things not to wear, Linda?
You bet. Again, it depends on what your purpose is. So, for instance, I use extreme examples. For a while, I worked in South Florida. I used to work downtown Miami, and there's different cultures and there's different styles for different things. And I came from a different culture. I came from out west to downtown Miami. Okay, I'm an Idaho farm girl. All right. And some of the clothes I saw in downtown Miami in corporate office space, I was like, oh, okay. I'm a little surprised by that. But again, what was the purpose? But when I do presentations and I illustrate this point, I always show for what the purpose is. Would you show up in a wedding dress
Mm,
for a conference, for a board meeting, or would you show up in something that maybe the organization, again, the goal is to dress one step up of whoever it is you're meeting, or would you, show up in something that would seem appropriate to the occasion, to the purpose. And then I also throw up the fact, would you show up to the beach in a business suit? Now, I've seen people on the beach in a business suit. That meant they were at a conference and they just took a quick little break. But normally, if they're going to the beach, they're not going to be wearing, a business suit, high heels for women, a tie for men necessarily on the beach. So again, there's a purpose. So really stepping back and looking at what your purpose is, looking at the environment too. I worked in the tech industry for about 6.5 years. And one of the things that some of the leadership would say to me is, Linda, you dress too nice. And
mm,
I'm like, really? But then I started thinking about it. I started looking and I realized that maybe I was being way overdressed for the environment. But you also have to be true to you as well.
yeah.
So I learned that, instead of wearing a business jacket, maybe I wore a 3/4 sleeve sweater over, some slacks and a top. And again, I made that modification. And what happens when I say the B in that is that behavior, I would behave a little bit differently
Mm.
based on what clothes that I'm wearing.
Okay, you said a few things there that I want us to take a moment to just sort of double click on. I When you were sharing that example, I had a similar experience. So when I was the president of the Bombay Furniture Company, I always wear suits because suits are my comfort, right? Like
Mhm.
that's what I like. And even now, like where suits are not really in fashion anymore, I put on a jacket because that's what I like. And
Mhm.
I remember the CEO saying to me the similar thing. I was the president, he was the CEO, and he said to me, he goes, "Vicky, you need to loosen up." And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "You always dress so formal." He goes, "You need to loosen up." And he would show up in a golf shirt, right?
Mhm.
And I said to him, I go, "But this is what I'm comfortable in, right?"
Mhm.
And so to your point, Linda, for me to have worn a golf shirt to work, I
Mhm.
would have been completely like a fish out of water. That would
Yeah,
just not have worked for me, right?
right.
Because also felt like I had to be a role model for our staff. And I
Right.
was also saying to our staff, you got to step your game up because you're
Yes.
customer facing. People are trusting you to decorate their homes and right. And
Mhm.
so there is that also. The other thing you said there, I think, is really important is you step it up, step that dress up, match who you're meeting with, and
Mhm.
you almost have to show up as if, right?
Mhm.
Like if you want to
Right.
be president of that company, then you show up dressed as if you already are. And I
Right.
think to me anyway, that's an important distinction.
Yeah, I absolutely. Yes, you talking to the choir. I mean, I have a whole thing about jackets too and the power of a jacket, whether it's, a business line type jacket or a soft drapey jacket. But I have statistics too. Another thing that I do on stage is I will take off my jacket and you lose 50% of your perceived authority. So again, what is your purpose? What is your purpose? And that's all part of the process.
That's interesting. Now, I didn't know that statistic. That's interesting. And it makes me curious, though, why, right? Like, because I mean, we hear all the statistics about even when you're selecting a CEO, like
Mhm.
most of the time it is a male that is selected because
Mhm.
the perceived is that he's tough enough to handle it, to, has more experience. Like there's all these statistics that back that up. But that's interesting what you just said, that when you take your jacket off, you lose 50% of your authority.
Yeah, perceived authority. Perceived
Perceived.
authority. Right.
Wow. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about beginning that journey with your internal image,
Mhm.
right? So we know how important it is, like on the external, right? To your I don't want to say you're playing a part, but you are dressing for that purpose. You're dressing for the audience that you're speaking to.
Right.
How do we start to reconcile that internal image?
Well, that comes back to that C, which is communication. And the communication is what it is you're telling yourself and the words that you use verbally that are heard, right?
Mm-hmm.
So power words are very powerful. You know, in my bio there, I don't know if you noticed, I had a couple alliterations. I know I was a little alliteration happy, but there is power in words, and they create an emotion. And we, in order to persuade, we are trying to connect with people's emotional selves. That's where people buy from. That's where
Sure.
they're persuaded from, right? So that's the external, but more importantly, what did you say to yourself the first thing you woke up in the morning? Did you complain about something about yourself, or did you just like fly by the mirror because it's like, I don't want to look in the mirror because I don't like what I'm seeing in the mirror? You don't like the fact that you just ate 3 donuts, this weekend. It's an inside
Side
joke.
note.
I found a great donut place this weekend. So I that is, what are those things that we're beating ourselves up with the self-talk? And quite frankly, we're often, if there's challenges in our life, more often than not, it's us. We're the ones that are getting in our own ways. And it starts all in our mind and in our mindset. And the way to do that is to start turning how you speak to yourself. If you speak to yourself as if you were your best friend, you would see opportunities and things that would come to you and to your world so quickly, it would amaze you. Because what happens when we're little, when we're this 3-year-old, we believe that anything is possible, and we are kings and queens of the world, and that we can do it. We can do anything we set our mind to. But what happens is that we start to believe the things of the world that come at us, the arrows that shoot at us, and start to destroy what we internally are really, of what's possible
Yeah.
within ourselves. So.
Yeah. That's such a, you just, if we focus on that for a few minutes, like the self-talk is so critical. And you hear, and have been guilty of it myself years back until I became conscious of it, of saying things like, "Oh my God, Vicky, you're so stupid. Why would you do that?"
Mhm.
Right. And then after I became conscious of it, it was like, "Oh my God, to your point, I would never say that to my best friend. I would be
Mhm.
encouraging her, right? I'd be saying,
Right.
what did you learn from that? Or don't beat yourself up. Look what you gained from that, right?" And so reframing that into something more affirmative.
Mhm.
But it's so fascinating what you just shared there, Linda, because I belong to this women's club in the Toronto area, and it's fabulous, right? You've got women from all walks of life. And there was a woman who came out of our coat closet one day, and she was like just ridiculing herself. And I
Mm.
didn't know her, but I stopped her and I said, "Why are you talking to yourself like that?"
Mhm.
And she went, "Excuse me?" And I said, "Do you realize what you're putting in at a cellular
Mhm.
level, what you're saying to yourself?" And she was like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "How would you talk to your best friend?" That's exactly what
Mhm.
I asked her. And it was so fascinating because fast forward several years, she's always saying, "You had such an impact on me by
Mhm.
just that simple question."
Wow.
Right. And so what I would say there is catch it for yourself, but catch it for other people. When you
Mhm.
hear them
That's a great point.
saying negative things, right? Like, correct that. Find something amazing. Like, sorry, I'm I know I'm digressing here a little bit, but it's no different when you're walking down the street and you see someone who looks stunning. It drives my daughter
Mhm.
crazy because I will make a point in walking over to that person saying, "Wow, you look fantastic." Doesn't matter whether it's male or female,
Mhm.
right? But
Mhm.
what does that do? Because that internal goes, you just rise a little higher, right?
Right.
So, yeah, so I truly, what you're saying is so impactful.
And the fact that a couple things there, Vicky, is the fact that you take time to notice someone else, that actually empowers you internally. So that's actually feeding you and your image that you are looking outward and you're letting go of the egocentric, but you're looking outward. And by that you're lifting and you're helping others. And that's another piece. So I have 15 what I call rays of image. And
Mm,
we're not talking about all of them, but that that being able to look and lift another actually ties into servant leadership. And that is very, very powerful. The other thing that you mentioned with regard to, changing, reframing that, one of the best ways I've tried to do that is as I work with my clients on this, is I encourage them to reframe that negative self-talk to, that's so unlike me. I trip. I've actually tripped in front of an audience getting ready to speak as I was walking up the stairs. And my husband had said, don't trip. And then I did.
oh
So
boy.
I'm in front of all of this audience and speaking, and I'm like, that's so unlike me. And instead of dwelling and like, oh my word, this is so embarrassing and shame and all this negative self-talk of, oh, you're so clumsy. But that's so unlike me. That's so unlike me. That
I love that.
completely turns that around.
Well, yes, and energetically, right? It allows you to show up with grace and
Mhm.
continue on with, the message that you came there to deliver to, you know, hundreds of people, one person, doesn't matter, right? It's
Right.
one person walking away saying, wow, she was so graceful when she tripped on the stage.
Yeah. I'm like,
Oh,
you will never forget me.
no, exactly. I love that. I love it. So, okay, so we've talked a little bit about the internal and the external and how they really do play hand in hand. So, what are some of those steps that people need to take to achieve that image of distinction?
It starts each morning when you wake up with being aware and stopping yourself with regard to what that self-talk is. And then it starts with, as you look at what your day is, how do you want to show up? What is your purpose?
Hmm.
And that's how you begin to put yourself together for the day. And that adds, all of these things. The basis, the foundation is mindset, but all of those things help. And if there's and as you look at your day and the things that are ahead of you, step back and say, okay, how is it that I want to show up? And what is my intention of what I want to happen for this day? And that is one of the best ways in order to start to frame what's going on. Also becoming very aware and, working with individuals like you and what I also provide in coaching. A coach will help you build those awarenesses of where you're being blocked and being able to move forward, because oftentimes we, like I said, we are the individual or the challenge. We're our biggest challenge is getting in our way. But when we have these awarenesses, then all of a sudden the world opens for us and we can see a way through what
Yeah.
those challenges are and being able to move forward. So
Yeah.
it really starts again with what's going on in the brain.
Yeah. Well, and just to expand on what you said there, it also, so you reframe it, it makes you feel better inside. You show up more fully for your day, but then it also opens the opportunity to attract more people like you people that
Right.
are more affirmative in a positive way, right? Like I know myself after I stopped this, Vicky, you're so stupid. All of a sudden, it opened me up to so many people that were behaving in the same way as me, looking for
Mhm.
connections that wanted to reframe to a positive and seeing possibility. All of those things we're talking about, right? Because it is a way of being. It's not just about a
Right.
checklist of, oh, I did this morning. It is a way of how you're engaging and embodying in the world.
Yeah. And then that check at the end of the day too, of, basically evaluating, how was I? Could I have shown up maybe a little bit better this way? Or, man, I nailed that. And how can I do that again? How would I do it a little bit differently? Reflecting, flipping back, and in really enjoying that. One of my biggest challenges is that I'm extremely goal oriented, of these big goals that I go after, but I have a tendency that once I complete the goal, I don't like take a minute to joy and celebrate the fact that I did that, because I'm like, okay, next thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes I even feel this letdown that of a big thing that I accomplished. And that's one of the things that I'm working on, is trying to let's just savor this moment. And maybe I'm getting a little bit better. The older I'm getting, I don't know, a little bit, but I think that's really important too, is to celebrate and recognize all of the strengths that you have,
Yeah.
and really focus on them. And I think you'll attract more of that in your life as well.
Absolutely. I love that you just said that because you took me back to a memory. Because we are all guilty of that, right? We're all very quick to move to the next thing. And I remember a connection of mine, she said to me, she goes, wow, she said, and this was several years ago now, but she said, you've really accomplished a lot in a very short period of time, moving from corporate to being an entrepreneur. And I kind of looked at her, and of course, my immediate was, oh, no, no, I have so much more to do. And she was she started naming off. She goes, look at what you've done. And
Mhm.
that was a really powerful moment because it did stop me in my tracks. And I was like, wow, yeah, I really have. Right. And to your point, Linda, we forget. Right. And
Mhm.
it's great to have those people in your court who also remind you, look at what you've done. Slow down long enough to
Mhm.
appreciate and celebrate what you have been able to accomplish.
Yeah, that's so true. One of the things that I encourage, well, it was an experience that I had. I love the fact that you shared how you pulled somebody out of that negative self-talk. I remember used to do a lot of facilitation for a very large organization, and we would have an annual gathering of the individuals, and people would compliment me on putting this event together and it moving forward. And I have a tendency, I'm a people pleaser for one, but I have a tendency to negate people's comments. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, no, 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 oh, no, 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 no. Or I'd say thank you, and oh, no, 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 kind of thing. And she was actually one of my leaders, one of the top leadership of the organization. She pulled me aside. She said, Linda, you need to stop it. I'm like, stop what? And
Mm.
she's like, I've heard 10 people compliment you. You said thank you, but then you negate their compliment. And it was a real big lesson to me as well. And again, you don't think that that's negative self-talk, but it is. And so it's not, you're invalidating somebody validating you. And
Yeah.
so
Oh,
that is a
wow.
really powerful lesson for me.
That is such a, you know what? I never even really thought about it that way. And that is so true, Linda, because that you're taking away their gift that they've just
Mhm.
given you, right? And I think, especially as women, we have been taught to be humble. We've been taught to
Mhm.
not brag. All of these stories that we share with ourselves. And interestingly, as you said that, I was at an event on Friday night and somebody said to me, "Oh my gosh, I have to introduce you, Vicki, because you have such a fabulous podcast and you're doing such great work and impacting women." And I was like, "Thank you, but no, really." And then you just said that and I'm going, "Oh my goodness." I did just do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really powerful taking ownership of it.
Mhm.
And yeah, you've worked hard. You've worked hard to accomplish what you've accomplished, whether it's an event, whether it's your podcast. Like you have a fabulous
Mhm.
podcast as well. So you work hard to do that, to deliver great content to people, to have an impact. And so, yeah, we do need to take ownership of it. So,
And
Linda,
it,
how? Oh,
oh,
sorry.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I was just going to say, just end it with thank you and a smile.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
that will help. That will help you not do the running of the mouth after,
Yes, I have learned my lesson. Thank you for that. That's a great tip. So, how does all of this play into our worth?
Hmm. Well, first off, you are worth everything without any of these other things
Mm.
impacting it. Already at the core, you are worth more than you could have ever imagined. I know that. I believe that. I know that, and my goal is to get that message out as loud and as wide as I possibly can, because you already are enough. You are already worth more than you could ever imagine. And it's okay to lean into that worth and understand, yes, I am of worth. I am enough. I have strengths. I have gifts that can help others, that are a blessing to others. And
Mm.
if you can really meditate on that and ponder that, then you will begin to change those challenges that you have, or those things that you don't believe about yourself. And if that's starting out, I'll never forget one of my many mentors that I had many years ago. He kind of caught me, and he really taught me about affirmations. Quite frankly, that was the first time I'd really ever experienced affirmations. And he said, I want you to start telling yourself you're confident. And he says, you can determine two other affirmations. Another affirmations is I'm divine.
Mm.
Because and I
Beautiful.
I am I'm a woman of faith, and I have great faith, but you weren't made from nothing. And so you are divine. There was a divine creator that made you. And so you are of that worth. And I mean, all you have to do is hold a baby, and you see that worth automatically. And that's who you are. The world has just perhaps beat you up, or circumstances have occurred in your life. But at the heart of who you are is you are enough.
Love that. Love that. Love that. Wow. That's so powerful. Wow. And that's, just a great way for us to sort of wrap up our conversation today. But before we do that, what is one thing you really, really want our audience to take away today?
That, Vicky, I love your phrase, I'm possible. I love that too. But I just, that the message I would like for all of the audience members to take away is that there are strengths waiting for you to uncover, possibilities to realize, so that you can accomplish not just your goals, but your dreams.
Mm,
For my deep belief is that with God, nothing is impossible.
mm. My mom often says, let go and let God.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hard to do.
it is.
Sometimes easy to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, that is definitely a journey. But just to really to see what your strengths are, and know that there's more to even uncover for you, is what's possible.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Well, Linda, this has been amazing. Thank you so, so, so much for being here today, and such an uplifting, energizing. You are the image energizer. So, an uplifting way for us to share with our audience. And where can people find you?
Thank you, Vicky. It has been a truly, and it has been so cool to be with you today. So thank you. The best best way is either through LinkedIn or find me on my website. LinkedIn is Linda with an I, H is in happy, Yates, Yates. My website is the same, Linda with an I, H as in happy, and then my last name Yates. So lindahyates.com.
Nice, nice, nice. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. And let's just take a moment. We're going to thank our audience for being here. Thank you for chiming in today and listening to our conversation. I hope that you've taken away some great nuggets to go out and shift that negative self-talk into positive self-talk if you're not already doing that. And if you are already doing it, lift someone else up. I love that. So thank you everybody for being here today. And if you're curious about your own leadership and how you're showing up, you can visit us at wilempowered. That's one L. You can see here, WIL empowered, and take our free leadership quiz. So thanks everyone for being here. And we look forward to seeing you or hearing you at our next Will Talk podcast. Linda, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.